Okay. Stella stood watching until the big chestnut had borne its master out of sight, and down the lane, across the meadow, she caught one more glimpse of them as he rode through the ford, the water dashing up a silver shower of spray as high as the horse's head, and then they vanished in the shadows of the woods which engulfed Windward Hall. But she stood still, lost in a dreamy reverie that was not thought, until her uncle's voice came floating down the garden, and with a start she ran up the path and stood breathless before him. The old man's placid face wore a slight look of anxiety, which faded instantly as he said, "Where have you been, Stella?" Wait, sorry, wrong voice. "Where have you been, Stella? I thought you had changed your mind and flown back to Italy again. Mrs. Padfold is searching the meadows wildly." Stella laughed as she put her arm round his neck. "Hey Danny, thank you so much for sharing the live. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much." "Hey Farhana, welcome. How's your day? I'm so sorry I couldn't catch your stream this afternoon, and I made it just in time to, well, get online." Okay, where was I? "You will not get rid of me so easily, uncle." "No, I had only been down the pretty lane at the end of the garden. See? Here are some flowers. Wait. Here are some flowers. Are they not sweet?" "Oh my god, thanks. Thank you so much for the rose." "Thank you so much, Farhana. It means a lot to me." "And they shall stand within sight while you are at work." And she filled a vase with water and arranged them. "Oh my god, Banks, thank you so much for the donut." "Thank you so much, really." "But the flowers are not all the fruits I have been of my wandering, uncle," she went on. "I had an adventure." He was strolling up and down with his pipe in his mouth, his hands folded behind him. "Banks, thank you so much." "Oh my god, Farhana, what do you mean you got the red flag?" "I hope you are okay. For those of you watching, I hope you have had a splendid day. Thank you so much again, Banks. I really appreciate it. It helps me continue to do this." "An adventure?" "Yes," she nodded. "I have met. Can you guess whom?" He smiled. "Mr. Fielding, the clergyman. It is his usual evening stroll." "No." "Oh, okay. I get what you mean, Farhana." "Banks, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really do. Thank you so much. I am very, very grateful. And I hope you stay and listen to the rest of the story." Okay, where was I? "Perhaps an old lady in a lace shawl, with a fat pug by her side? If so, you have made an acquaintance with the great Mrs. Hamilton, the doctor's wife." "No, it was not anyone's wife, uncle, but it was a man. You shan't guess any more. But what do you say to Lord Leicester, sorry." "Anyways, it's looking cute. You put the book in a position." Yeah, no, my pet dragon is also judging me as I read. Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't really like that. Okay, where was I? She bent over the flowers, ashamed of the meaningless blush which rose to her face. "Yes, uncle, it is like him, but I could not see very distinctly, you know. It was moonlight, He was riding a great, huge chestnut horse. I know, he murmured. And tearing along a lost spirit, he flashed past like a meteor, I expect. No, you could not see him, and cannot judge of my portrait. But he didn't flash past, uncle. He would have done, no doubt, but the chestnut declined. I think it was frightened by me, for I was standing on the bank. And he stopped? Asked Mr. Atteridge. It was a wonder such a little thing as the shying of his horse was sufficient to rouse the devil in him. He stopped? Hello, hi, Face Master. Hi. Because he was obliged, said Stella in a low voice, a deep blush of maidenly shame rising to her face, as she remembers that it was she who had really stopped him, not him. And he was very furious. No, the proverbial lamb could not have been more quiet, uncle, said Stella with a musical laugh. Mr. Atteridge laughed. He must have been in good humor. It was strange, him being out tonight. The hall is full of people from town, but it will not matter to him if he wanted to ride. Though the prince himself were there, he would go. And my picture? Did him justice, uncle. Yes, he's very handsome. He wore a loose velvet coat, tonight of dark purple. I did not know a gentleman wore such colors now. Hey, Face Master, thank you so much. I hope you get to stay for the rest of the story. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the like. Hey, Banks, thank you so much for the share. A smoking coat, he explained. Now, I think I can see him. No doubt, he had obeyed the impulse of the moment. Had jumped up and left him down at the hall, saddled his very own horse, and tore away across the river. Well, you have probably seen the last of him for some time, Stella. He rarely stays at the hall. For more than a day or two. Town has too great a charm for him. Stella's lips opened, and she was about to reply. He had suddenly resolved to stay. But something stopped the words on her lips. Presently, there was a knock on the door, and Mrs. Panfold came in with the candles. You have given me quite a turn, Miss Stella, she said, with a smile of reproach. I thought you were lost. Your room is quite ready now, miss. Stella went up to the old man and kissed him. Good night, uncle, she murmured. Good night, my child, he said, his eyes dwelling on her tenderly, but something of bewildered look clouding them. Good night, and happy dreams for this, your first night at home. At home, murmured Stella. At home. You're very good to me, uncle. And she kissed him again. Hey, Face Master, thank you so much for the follow. Mrs. Panfold has done wonders in such short time permitted her. Hey, Banks, thank you so much for tagging along. You gotta go. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best. Thank you for the support. Okay, where was I? Alright. Mrs. Panfold has done wonders in such short time permitted her. And Stella found herself standing alone in a tiny room, modestly but comfortably. Oh, so comfortably. Furnished with its white bed and its old-fashioned dimity curtains framing the lattice window. As her gaze wandered around the room, her glorious eyes grew moist. It was all so sudden, so sweet for the contrasted gaunt, bare room, which for a very year she had shared with a score of girls as miserable as herself. So sudden, she could scarcely believe it was real. But youth is ever ready to accept the surprises of life, and she fell asleep. Fell asleep to the dream she was back in the wretched school in Italy, and chained to a stone wall from which all her efforts to free herself was unavailing. But presently she thought that a tall, stalwart figure came riding down on a big chestnut horse, and then with one sweep of his strong hand, he broke her chains asunder, and, lifting her into a saddle, and bore her away. Then the scene changed. She seemed to be following her rescuer, who, with his handsome face, turned over his shoulder, drew her on continually with a strange, fascinating smile. All through her dreams, his smiling eyes haunted her, and once she stretched out her hands to keep it from herself. But even in the action, the gesture of repulse turned into a strange, subtle manner to one of entreaty and welcome. And she drew the smile, as it were, to her bosom, and She drew to her bosom. If for those of you who know, you know, and good. And folded her hands over it. A girlish fancy, perhaps. But such fancies influence a life of good or ill, for joy or misery. Yes, Farhana. She was in her dream. She was getting him to touch the butt. Yes. Lord Leicester Windward, of whose smile Stella was dreaming, had ridden up the hills. The great chestnut, scarcely breaking his pace, but breathing hard and defiance from his wide red nostrils, had ridden up the hills and through the woods, and reached the open plateau, lying the hall. Hey Tabby, thank you so much for the like. Hi again. I know, right, Farhana? This girl is crazy. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Where was I? A noble park occupied the plateau. Okay. A park of chestnuts and oaks, which were the pride of the county. Through the park wound the road, gleaming white in the moonlight, to the front gates of Windward. The lodgekeeper heard the beat of the chestnut's feet. Oh, thank you so much for the like. Yeah, the chestnut is the horse, for those of you who don't know. Okay. The lodgekeeper heard the beat of the chestnut's feet, for which he had been listening intently, and threw open the gate, and Lord Leicester entered the grounds. They were vast in extent and exquisitely laid out, the roads winding between a noble and avenue of trees that arch overhead. The present Earl's grandfather had gone in for an arboriculture, I believe, and the way that was lined up for 50 feet back with rare shrubs and conifers. So serpentine was the road that the great grey mansion broke upon the greys, suddenly, mentally startling him, who approached it for the first time. To Lord Leicester, it was a familiar sight. But familiar as it was, he glanced up at it, with almost a nod of approval. Like most men of his nature, he possessed a passionate love and appreciation for the beautiful, and there was tonight, with a strange, indefinable fire in his hot blood, which made him more than usually susceptible to the influence of the scene. A sweeping curve of the road led to the terrace which stretched along the whole front of the house, and by which of the principal was gained. Lord Leicester struck off to the right and entered a modern courtyard, 3 sides of which were occupied by the admirable stables. Hey Kazuma, hi. Good morning to you. Yeah, reading is hard. Hi, hello Tabby. A couple of grooms had been listening as intently as the lodge keeper, and he entered the yard as they hurried forward, silently, and took to the chestnut. Lord Leicester dropped to the ground, patted the horse, which made him a playfully affectionate snap at his arm, and ascending a flight of stairs, entered the lower end of the hall, which stretched throughout the building. Oh my god, this is so... I need to keep drinking water. Okay. The hall was softly but sufficiently lighted by shaded lamps, supported by the huge figures in bronze, which diffuse... Yeah, I know it's frozen. The freaking app. It's actually my Wi-Fi. My net isn't very good. Hello, give me a break. Give me a quick second. Okay. Oh yeah, it was raining like crazy. Okay, what was I? Right. The hall was softly but sufficiently lighted by the shaded lamps, supported by huge figures in bronze, which diffused a charming glow upon the innumerable pictures upon the panels of dark oak. From the vaulted roof hung tattered flags, most of them borne by the earliest windwards, some of them bestowed by the graceful hands of the dead and gone princes. The somewhat gloomy aspect of the place was lightened by the gleaming armor of the knightly effigies which stood at regular intervals upon the tessellated floor, and by the deep crimson of the curtains which screened the heavy doors and tall windows. The whole scene, the very atmosphere, as it seemed, was characteristic of an ancient and powerful race, notwithstanding that the house was full of guests, and that a brilliant party was at that moment in the drawing room. Not a sound penetrated the vast hall. The 2 or 3 servants which were standing by the doors or sitting by the benches, talking in harsh voices, were silent the moment he entered, and one came forward to receive any commands. Yeah, it was raining for me. Yeah, hi Kazuma. It's a bit early for a bedtime story for you, ain't it? Okay. Now, where was I? Oh, Teddy, thank you so much for the follow. Okay. Notwithstanding notwithstanding the burlesque which is the salient characteristic of our present life, the old world, state and formality still existed at Windward, be as exacting and capricious as you might. You had no fear of meeting any inattention or disrespect from the army of servants, whose one aim and purpose in life seems to be minister to the wants and moods of their superiors. Oh my god, thank you so much for the rose, Teddy. Okay. It was a princely house, conducted in stately fashion, without regard to cost or trouble, and the servants, from the pages to the countess' own maids, were as proud of their position in its degree as the lord of Windward of his. "Send Oliver to me," said Lord Windward as he passed the man. "I am going to my room." He went up the stairs, and passing along the principal corridor, entered a room fronting the park. It was one of a suite, which consisted of a sort of sitting room, a dressing room, and, beyond, a bedroom. The sitting room gave pretty plainly indications of the owner's tastes and dispositions. It was a medley of objects connected with sport and art. Here, a set of boxing gloves and foils, a gun rack well stocked, fishing rods and whips hung over the antique fireplace with a wide open hearth and dog irons. On one side of the room hung a collection of etchings, unique and priceless. On another, half a dozen gems in oil, while against the third stood a piano, an easel which upon rested a canvas displaying a half-finished Venus rising from a cradle of sea foam. For upon this, the only son of the house, the partial gods had bestowed many gifts. Okay, Farhana, don't worry about it. Go do your thing. Thank you. Any of which, had he been a poor man, would have made the world regard him as one of its masters. But as it was, he painted and played for amusement only, and there were only a few of his friends. Thank you so much, Teddy. Thank you. Okay, I'll catch you next time. Have a good day. Thank you. Right, where was I? Alright. But as it was, he painted and played for amusement only, and there was only a few of his friends, and only those who were most intimate, who suspected that a wild, reckless Leicester could do more than ride like a centaur and shoot like a North American Indian. Hi, Yuiko? Thank you so much for the follow. Give me a moment. Okay. How were they to know, seeing that he rarely spoke of art, and never of his own passionate love for it? Had they known, it would have given them a key to much in his character, which puzzled and bewildered them. They would have been nearer understanding how it was that in one man could be combined the soft tenderness of a southern nature with the resolute, defiant recklessness of the northern. He entered the room and went to the fireplace, in which a log was burning brightly, to guard against the too frequently treachery of an early summer evening. And flinging his hat onto a chair, passed his hand through his hair with a thoughtful yet restless smile. "Stella," he murmured. "Stella, That was wrong. A star should be fair and golden, all light and sunshine, while she... Great heaven, what eyes! It was surely the sweetest, loveliest face that a man ever looked upon. No wonder that coming upon it so suddenly, when my thoughts 100 miles away, coming upon it suddenly shone above me, that I should only think it was a vision. If that face, as I saw, could smile from the academy next spring, what crowds of fools would gather round to gape and stare at it? Yes, by who could do it? No one. As well try and catch the sunlight on a brush and paint it on the canvas. Might as well try. He broke off suddenly, his eyes caught by the Venus Aphrodite smiling from the easel. And going across it, stood and contemplated about it. Venus with a pale pink face and meaningless blue eyes, with yellow hair and a simpering smile. Nevermore will Venus take that semblance for me. No, she will be as I saw next to her tonight, with dark silken hair and sweeping lashes shading the dark brown eyes, in which one sees the soul peering from their depths. That is Venus, not this. And with a smile of derision, he took up a brush and drew a dark, broad, effacing line across the fair face. So departs forever my former dreams of womanly loveliness. I had never seen it until tonight. Stella, a star. Yes, she is rightly named, after all. She shone down on me like a star, and I, great heaven, was like one bewitched. While she made a laughing stock of me, comparing me with a nag, and treated me like a schoolboy too big to be whipped, but not too large to be laughed at. By Jove, it is not a thing to be proud of, called to task by a girl. A little slip of a girl, not yet a woman, and yet I would not have missed that laugh and the light scorn of her dark eyes, though they lighted at my expense. Stella. There was a knock at the door, and his valet, Oliver, entered. Hey, thank you so much for the follow. Okay, give me a second to drink water. Okay. Lord Leicester stared at him a moment abstractedly, then roused himself from his reverie. What is it, Oliver? You have sent for me, my lord. Oh yes, I had forgotten. I will wash and get into my other coat. Oliver passed noiselessly into the other room and assisted his master in changing the velvet smoking jacket for the dress coat, brushed the thick, short-cut chestnut hair in order, and then opened the door. Where are they all? He asked. Are any of them in my smoking room? Yes, my lord. Lord Barton and Captain Halliday, the Marquis of Sanford, and Sir William are in the billiard room. Lord Leicester nodded and went down the stairs across the hall. A servant drew a curtain aside and opened a door. Lord Leicester entered a small ante-room. One side, which opened into a long stretching fernery, from which came the soft drip of fountains, and the breath which filled the whole atmosphere with tropical perfume. Hello, hi Emma. Lucille, thank you so much for the follow. A couple of footmen in gorgeous livery was standing beside a double curtain, and at a sign from Lord Leicester they drew it apart. Lord Leicester passed through and down a small corridor lined with statuary, at the end of which was another curtain. No passage, or door, or anteroom was thus masked to shut out two things which the Earl held as abominations: draught and noise. With the opening of these curtains, the large saloon was revealed like the scene on a stage of a theatre. It was a magnificent room in keeping with the rest of the place, richly but not gorgeously decorated and lighted by the wax candles shining through the faintly hued globes. At one end stood a grand piano in white, an ormolu, and a lady was playing and singing, while others were standing round with teacups in their hands. Near the fireplace was a table, upon which stood a silver equipage, which the Countess was busied. Lady Winwood was still in her prime, notwithstanding that Lord Leicester was 23. She had been married at 18, and was now in the perfection of matronly beauty. One had only to glance at her to learn from whence Leicester got this profound, strange beauty. Near her stood a tall, thin gentleman, with proud, clean-cut face and iron grey hair, worn rather long and brushed back from a white, lofty brow. It was the Earl. His dark, piercing eyes were bent upon the ground as he stood listening to the music. But he saw Leicester enter and raise his head as a slight frown crossed his face. Lady Winwood saw the frown and sought the cause, but her face shows no sign of surprise nor displeasure. It was calm and impassive at all times, as if its owner disdained the weakness of ordinary mortals. Leicester paused a moment, taking in the scene, and then he crossed the room and went up to the table. Lady Winwood looked up with her serene, imperial smile. Okay, how should I voice this character? Would you like to have some tea, Leicester? Thanks, he said. Thanks, he said. She gave him his cup, and he took it. He took the young man, left the group at the piano, and came up to him, laughing. Where have you been, Leicester? He asked, putting his hand on the broad shoulder. It was Lord Charles Guilford, Leicester's most intimate friend. Oh my god, Kazuma, thank you so much. You didn't have to, but seriously, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. Let's play Forza sometime. Seriously. Okay, where was I? Between these two existed an affection which was almost, say rather, more than fraternal. They had been together at Anton, where Leicester the Great, stalwart lad, had fought the slight frail boy's battles. They had lived in the same rooms at Oxford. Wow, this guy went to Oxford. Okay. So prestigious. Okay, where was I? Had been comrades in all the wild escapades which made their term at college a notorious one, and then they were inseparable. No, Kazuma, I don't know what that is, but it sounds pretty interesting. Please tell me more about it. Leicester had grown from a tall lad into a stalwart man. Lord Charles, or Charlie, as he was called, had fulfilled the promise of his frail boyhood and developed into a slight, thin, fair-haired youth with the indolent grace which sometimes accompanies weakness and the gentle nature of a woman. Leicester turned to him with a smile. The Earl looked up to hear the answer. The Countess busied, okay, that's quite hard, busied herself with the teapot, as if she was not listening as intently. If you have TikTok, look at book talk, I can show you that. Okay, Kazuma, thank you. Sounds good. I'll look into it. We can talk about it too. Okay. Hi Emma, don't worry about it. We are still in chapter 2. We are only in chapter 2. You didn't miss much. And you can find this video later. The full thing. Don't worry about it. Okay, where was I? I went for a gallop, Charlie, said Leicester. You fellows were half asleep in the smoking room, and I listened to Barton's Indian story for the 100th time. It got rather slow, and I remembered that the chestnut had been eating his head off for the last 5 weeks. And I thought I would give him a turn. The Earl frowned and turned away. Lord Charles laughed. Pretty behavior, he exclaimed, and here we are, hunting all over the place for you. Why didn't you come into the drawing room to us, Lord Leicester? Wait, sorry, that's a female. Why didn't you come into the drawing room to us, Lord Leicester? Said a beautiful girl who was sitting near. We should not have bored you with any Indian stories. But you see, I should have bored you, Lady Constance, he smiled. The girl smiled up in his face. Perhaps you would, she said. Okay, I'm sorry guys, I'm trying to sound like a girl, but my voice is very deep. It's quite hard for me to pretend to be a girl, so bear with me, please. Okay. Perhaps you would, she said. You are more than considerate than I thought. I would never venture into the lady's sanctum after dinner till the tea is announced, he retorted. I've an idea, shared by my sex generally, that it is not safe, that, in short, you are too ferocious. And you prefer riding about the country till we are quiet down? Or are we quiet now, and do we look ferocious? And she smiled at him from behind. Oh, okay. And she smiled upon him from behind her fan with a plain invitation. He sat down beside her and began to talk the infinite nothings which came to his lips so easily, the trivial small change which his musical voice and rare smile seemed to transform to true coin. But while he talked, his thoughts were wandering to the dark-haired girl who had shone down upon him from her green and fragrant bower in the lane, and he found himself picturing her in the little room at the cottage in the meadows, amongst the curious litter of the old artist's studio, and gradually his answers grew disjointed and inconsequential. He got up abruptly and wandered across the room, stopping to exchange a word or two with the others. His tall, graceful figure towering above those. Oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. His tall, graceful figure towering above those of the other men, his handsome head thrown back musingly. Many an admiring and wistful glance followed him from among the women, and not a few would have exerted all their fascinations to keep him by his side, had they known by experience that when he was in his present mood, he was deaf to the voice and smile of the charmer. Charmed, she never so wisely. Okay, that was chapter 3. Give me a quick break. How is it so far? Okay. I need to drink some water. 1 second. Okay. I'll give you a quick rundown. So basically, Leicester, the man on the horse, went back to his place, and he's talking to his servants, and there are other girls. They are trying to charm him because apparently there's a party. Oh my god, Lucille, thank you so much for the little cake. Oh my god, thank you so much. Sincerely, it really means a lot. Thank you. Okay guys, please stay tuned. I'm just gonna walk out to get water, please. Okay. Right. Chapter 4. Thank you, Lucille. Thank you again. Okay. The Countess watched him from her table, and looking up at the Earl, murmured, "Leicester is one of those restless moods tonight." "Yes," he said with a sigh. "What is it? Do you know?" "No," she said calmly. "He was all right at dinner." "Thanks, Farhana. Thank you." "Okay. Why can he not behave like other people, said the Earl sadly. "Can you fancy any other man leaving his father's guests and riding about the country?" "Leicester was never like any other," she said, not without a touch of pride. "He is as he is, and nothing can alter him." The Earl was silent for a moment, his long white hands folded behind his back, his dark eyes fixed on the floor. "Has he told you of one of his last escapades? His last mad freak?" he said in a low voice. Okay, that's not really a low voice. Sorry. Apologies, guys. "Yes," she answered calmly. "He has never concealed anything from me. It is nearly £20,000. Even Windward must feel such strange as this." Nice one, Kazuma. Okay. The Countess raised her head. "I know," she said. "Has he told me everything? It was a point of honor. I do not quite understand. Horse racing is a pastime which I have little sympathy. Though we had always owned racehorses, it was a point of honor. Someone had to be taking advantage of his name to act so dishonestly, and he withdrew the horse. He could take no other course," he said. The Earl sighed. "No doubt, but it is mad folly, and there is no end to it. If he could see some limit, why does he not marry?" The Countess glanced back at the handsome face. "He will not marry until he meets with someone he can love. The Earl looked round the room at the many beautiful women who adorned it and sighed impatiently. He is hard to please. He is, assented the Countess with the same touch of pride. It is time he married and settled, continued the Earl. For most men, a year or two would not matter, but with him, I do not like to think that the title rests only on our two lives, as mine must be near its close. Algernon! And on his, which is risked daily. He stooped, silenced by the sudden look of pain in the beautiful eyes. Why do you not speak to him? He will do anything for you. The Countess smiled. Anything but that. No, I cannot speak to him. It would be useless. I do not wish to weaken my influence. Get Lillian to speak to him, he said. The Countess sighed. My voice is gonna crack. Pardon me, guys. Lillian, she murmured. She will not do it. She thinks him something more than human, and that no woman in this world can be good enough to hold his stirrup or fill his wine glass. Thank you so much for the like. The Earl frowned. Between you, he said, you have spoiled him. The Countess shook her head gently. No, we have not. He is a man, and as a man, he was a boy. Do you remember what Nelson said when Hardy asked him why he did nothing when one of their ships was fighting two of the enemies? I'm doing all I can, watching. Hi, Kitsune. Oh my god, Leo Gua noises. Hi. Okay, where's I? Before the Earl could reply, a cabinet minister came up and engaged him in conversation. The Countess rose and crossed the room to where an elderly lady sat with a portfolio of engravings before her. It was the Countess of Longford, a tiny little man with a thin, wrinkled face, and keen but kindly grey eyes that lit up her white face and made it remarkable. Hello, guys. Welcome. Okay. She was dressed as simply as a Quakeress, excepting for some old and priceless lace which softened the rigor of a plainly made grey satin dress. She looked up as the younger Countess approached and made room for her on the sofa. Lady Winwood sat down in silence, which was unbroken for a minute. Then the old Countess said, without looking at her, "The boy grows handsomer every day, Ethel." Lady Winwood sighed. No, Emma, Lady Winwood is the mom to Leicester. Okay. What is the matter? Asked the other, with a keen smile. What has he been doing now? Burning a church? Or running off with a Lord Mayor's daughter? He has not been doing anything very much, answered Lady Winwood, except losing some money. Yeah, bedtime story, pretty much. Okay. The old Countess raised her eyebrows slightly. That does not matter. Not much, no. He has not been doing anything. I wish he would. That is what it's the matter. Oh my god. Hi, Zach. Hello. Welcome back. Sorry, I couldn't talk to you yesterday. Okay, where was I understand, retorted the other. He is most dangerous when quiet, and you are always afraid he was preparing for some piece of madness beyond the ordinary. Well, my dear, if you will give him the world such as a creature, you must put up with the consequences. Be prepared to pay the penalty. I should be quite content to do so. Ah, you don't know, said the Countess, with a smile that had something pathetic in it. Yes, I do, retorted the old lady. And I envy you still. I love the boy, Ethel. There is not a woman of us in this room, from the youngest to the oldest, who does not love him. You cannot expect one whom the gods have so favored to behave like an ordinary mortal. Why not? It is just as Algernon has said of me. Sorry, I'm not really good with female voices. My voice is a bit low, as you you guys have realized. Hey Kitsune, that's okay. Just take care of yourself. Okay. Oh, ship is under attack. Okay. Hi, Oyen Cat. Hi, Zach. Hi, everyone. Okay, where was I in the story? Okay, sometimes I need to read first because I need to understand which is the character I'm voicing. Sometimes I accidentally voice a male voice on a female character and then suddenly it ruins the immersion. So give me 1 second. Okay, so this female. This is still the other lady. I thought as much. I was watching you two. Of all things, beware of this. Don't let Algernon interfere with him. It is a strange thing to say, but his father is the worst man of all the world to attempt to put a bridle on Leicester. It is we women who alone have the power to guide him. Oh my god, thank you so much, Zach. It means a lot. Really, thank you so much. Hopefully we can play Forza too. Thank you so much, Kazuma. I'm really trying. I do voice acting on the side. Yeah, for those of you who are wondering, I do voice acting for like smaller roles. Hopefully I get to do a big role someday. Okay, where was I? That is where my fear lies, said the Countess. It is the thought of what may happen in the quarter which fills me with daily dread. Okay. That is one safeguard. Marry him, remarked the old Countess, but with a comical smile. Oh, Zach, Okay. I'll definitely check up your stuff later. Thank you so much for letting me know, Zach. Okay. Again, this is what Algernon says. By the way, Algernon is the husband, I assume. Okay. You both say as calmly as you told me to give him a cup of tea. The old Countess was silent for a moment, and then she said, Where is Lenore? Okay, how do you even pronounce this? Beauchamp. Okay, where is Lenore Beauchamp? Lady Winwood was almost guilty of a start. You read my thoughts, she said. The old lady nodded. She's the only woman who can really touch him. Ask her here. Let them still be together. She will be glad to come. You know, beautiful, Beau, and champ as in champion. So Beau, champ. Yeah, you're probably right. It's probably Beauchamp or whatever. Oh, your son does it too. Okay, I'll check it out later. Okay, where was I? Okay. The lady drew up her head as haughtily as she was Leicester's mother. And then, is there any girl among them who will not jump at the chance? I don't mean he's the heir to Winwood. He's enough in himself without that. It is well you are not his mother. You would have made him what he is not now. Vain. The old lady sighed. I know it, but you are wrong about Lenore. If she ever cared for anyone, it is Leicester. She is proud, but the love levels pride, and she might put forth her power. If she should, not even Leicester can withstand her. Ask her down, leave the rest to her, and Providence. The Countess sat for a moment in silence, and then she put her hand upon a thin, wrinkled hand, unadorned by a single gem. I have always you to come to. I think you understand him better than his own mother. No, said the old lady, but I love him nearly as well. I will write at once, said the countess, and she rose and crossed to the anteroom. There was a writing table amongst the furniture. The servant saw her go to it, and noiselessly left the room. She took up the pen and thought a moment, and then wrote. Okay guys, this is what she wrote in the letter. My dear Lenore, will you come down and spend a week with us? We have a few friends with us, but we are not completely without you. But we are not complete without you. Do not say no, but come. I do not name any day, so that you may be free to fix your own. Yours affectionately, Ethel Winward. P.S. Leicester is with us. Yeah, very important. P.S. Leicester is with us. Very important. It's written in bold, by the way, guys. Okay. As she wrote the signature, she heard steps behind her, which she knew was Leicester's. He stopped short as he saw her, and coming up to her, put his hand on her white shoulder. Writing, mother, he said. The countess folded her letter. Yes. Where are you going? He pointed to the Lewis clock that ticked solemnly on a bracket. 10 o'clock, mother, he said with a smile. Oh yes, I see, she assented. He stood for a moment, looking down at her with all a young man's filial pride in a mother's beauty, and, bending down, and touched her cheek with his lips, and then passed out. The countess looked after him with her softened eyes. Who could help loving him? She murmured. Humming an air from the last opera, he ran lightly up the staircase and passed along the corridor. But as he reached the further end and knocked at the door, the light air died upon his lips. A low voice murmured, "Come in." And then opening gently, he entered. The room was a small one, and luxuriously furnished in a rather strange style. On the first entrance, a stranger would have been struck by the soft and delicate tint which pervaded throughout. There was not a brilliant color in the apartment. The carpet and hangings, the furniture, the pictures themselves were all of repose tint, which could not tire the eye and weary the sense. The carpet was a thick Persian rug, which deadened at the sound of footsteps. Costly hangings of cool and restful grey covered the walls, save at intervals. The fire itself was screened by a semi-transparent screen. The only light came from a lamp which was suspended by a silver chain from the ceiling and was covered by a thick shade. On a couch placed by the window reclined a young girl. As Leicester entered, She half rose and turned a pale but beautiful face towards him with an expectant smile. Beautiful is a word that is easily written, and written so often that its significance has got dulled. It fails to convey any idea of the ethereal loveliness of Lillian Winward. Had Mr. Etheridge painted a face with Leicester's eyes, and given it delicately cut lips and spiritual expression of one of Raphael's angels, it would have been a fair representation of Lillian Winward. "It is you, Leicester," she said. "I knew you would come." And she pointed to a small travelling clock that stood on the table near her. He went up to her and kissed her, and she... Wait, what? Wait, kissed where? Guys, that's not right. Okay. No, but isn't that the sister? Hello? What? Yo, incest? Okay, never mind. Let's continue reading. Let's find out what's actually happening. Okay. He went up to her and kissed her, and she put her arms round his neck. And laid her face against his eyes, her eyes looking into his with rapt devotion. What? Wait, hold on. Is this the wife? I'm so confused. Okay, let's continue reading. Okay. "How hot you are, my dear. Is it hot down there?" "Awfully," he said. Yeah, Kazuma, I'm reading Only a Girl's Love by Charles Garvice. It's you can find the book online. Okay, where were we? Interesting stuff. Awfully, he said, seating himself beside her and thrusting his hands into his pockets. "There is not a breath of air moving. If there were, the governor would take care of it to shut it out. The room is deliriously cool. Lil, it is a treat to come into it." "Is it?" she said, with glad eagerness. "You really think it is? I like to hear you say that." "Yes, it's the prettiest room in the house." "What is it smell so sweet?" "Lilac," she said, and she pointed to a bunch on the table. "I see. I thought it was lilac," he said quietly. "I noticed it when I came in." She took the spray from him and fastened it in his coat, against which her hands looked as the driven snow. "You shall take it to your own room, Lay," she said. "You shall take them all." "Hello, bottle." Okay. "Not for worlds, Lil," he said. "This will do." "And what are they doing?" she asked. "The usual thing," he replied. "Playing, singing, rubber at whist, and boring each other out to death. Generally." She smiled. "And what have you been doing?" "Assisting in the latter amusement," he answered. "They told me you had gone out," she said. He nodded. "Yes, I took Chestnut for a spin." She laughed. a soft, hushed laugh. And left them the first night. That's so like you, Lei. What was the use of staying? It was wrong, I suppose. I'm unfortunate. Yes, I went for a ride. It was a lovely evening. I watched the sunset. And she looked out the window. As if I had known you were going, I would have looked for you. I'd like to see you riding that big chestnut. You went across the meadows? Yes, he said. Across the meadows. He was silent for a minute, and then he said suddenly, Lil, I've seen a vision tonight. A vision, Lei? She repeated, looking up at him eagerly. He nodded. A vision. The most beautiful girl I have ever seen. Excepting you, Lil. She made no protest, but smiled. Lei, a girl! What was she like? I can't tell you, he said. I came upon her in a moment. The chestnut saw her first. I was human enough to be struck motionless. I was struck too. And you can't tell me what she's like? No. If I were to describe her with the usual phrases, you would smile. You women always do. You can't help being a woman, Lil. Was she dark or fair? Dark, he replied. I did not know it at the time. It was impossible to think she was dark or fair when one looked at her, but I remembered afterward. Okay. Lil, you remember that picture I sent you from Paris? The picture of the girl with the dark eyes, long, silky hair. Not black, but brown in the sunlight, with long lashes shading the eyes. And the lips curved in a half-serious smile as she looks down at the dog fawning at her feet. I remember, Lei. Was she like that? Yes, only alive. Fancy the girl in the picture alive. Fancy yourself, the dog she was smiling at. I was the dog. Lei. And she spoke as well as smiled. You can imagine the voice the girl in the picture would have. Soft and musical, but clear as a bell, and full of subtle kind of witchery, half serious, half mockery. Was the voice of a girl I met in the lane this evening. Lei, you have come to make poetry to me tonight. I am very grateful. Poetry? It is truth. But you're right. Such a face, such a voice would make a poet of the hardest man that lives. And you are not hard, Lei? Guys, no 18 above content here, not yet. And you are not hard, Lei? But the girl, who is she? What is her name? Her name. He hesitated for a moment, and his voice unconsciously grew wonderfully musical. Is Stella. Stella, she repeated. It is a beautiful name. Is it not? Stella. And she is... who exactly? The niece of old Etheridge, the artist at the cottage. Lillian's eyes opened wide. Really, Lei? I must see her. His face flushed, and he looked at her. She caught the eager look, and her own paled suddenly. No, she said, gravely. I will not see her. Lei, you will forget her by tomorrow. He smiled. You will forget her by tomorrow. Lei, let me look at you. He turned his face to her, and she looked straight into his eyes. Then she put her arm around his neck. Oh, Lei, has it come at last? What do you mean? He asked, not angrily, but with a touch of grimness, as if he was afraid of the answer. Lei, she said, you must not see her again. Lei, you will go tomorrow, will you not? Why? He asked. It is not like you to send me away, Lil. No, but I do. I who look forward to seeing you as the sweetest thing in my life. I who would rather you near me than be other than I am. I who lie and wait and listen for your footsteps. I send you, Lei. Think. You must go. Go at once, for your own sake and for hers. He rose, smiled down at her. For my sake, perhaps, but not for hers. You foolish girl. Do you think all your sex is as partial as you are? You did not see her as I saw her tonight. Do you hear her ready wit at my expense? For her sake, you make me smile, Lil. I cannot smile, Lei. You will not stay. What good can come of it? I know you so well. You will not be content until you see your Venus again. And then, Lei, what can she do but love you? Love you but to lose you. Lei, all that has gone before has made me smile, because with them I knew you were heart whole. I could look into your eyes and see the light of laughter in their depths. But not this time, Lei, not this time. You must go. Promise me. His face went pale under her gaze, and the defiant look, which so rarely shone out in her presence, came into his eyes and about his lips. I cannot promise, Lil, he said. Okay, that was the end of chapter 4. What does everyone think about the story so far? Is it engaging enough? Hello, Danny boy, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I just finished chapter 4. So it depends. Does everyone want me to continue to chapter 5, even though I planned for chapter 4? Okay, that's some good water. Oh, that's tiring. So how's everyone's day today? Okay. Chapter 5, do I do? Oh my god, Tabby, thank you so much. You don't have to. Thank you so much, Tabby. Thank you so much for the 3 roses. Okay, tell you what, I'll do chapter 5. Who wants? Well, I'll let chat decide. Do you guys want chapter 5 right now, or do you guys want to wait a week? I think I have a bit of time. Okay, we have 1 fan already. Okay, Emma, I'll do it for you. Hi DK Desu. Yeah, a lot of people have been telling me that. Funny enough, that's not really the reference point. But thank you so much for coming. Hi Lucille, your voice is so soothing. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. Thank you, thank you. I hope you stay for chapter 5. It's okay. I'll be adding more voice stuff, so stay tuned. You're searching for that girl, Stella. Okay, tell you what, I'll go on with chapter 5. You'll literally be able to find out what happens to Stella. DK Desu. No, it's actually not Giyu. I know a lot of people call me Giyu, but it's not really my reference point. But it's okay. If you want, I'll be Giyu for you. Is that okay? Okay. Okay, let's start with chapter 5. Ooh. Okay. So, are you all comfy? Let's continue our part of the journey. Make sure to stay underneath your blanket or sit in a comfy chair, wrapped up. Are you guys cozy yet? And if so, then I'm gonna continue now. Chapter 5. For love lay lurking in the cloud and mist. I heard him singing sweetly on the mountainside. 'Tis all I... Oh wait, sorry, 1 second. 'Tis all in vain you fly, for everywhere am I, in every quiet valley, in every mountainside. In the clear, bird-like tones of Stella's voice. Oh my god. That wasn't the guy, that was Stella. Okay, never mind, pretend that was Stella singing. Stella has a deep voice. My god. In the clear, bird-like tones of Stella's voice, the musical words floated from the open window of her room above and through the open French windows of the old man's studio. All good. I hope you had something delicious to eat for dinner, all of you guys. Yeah, unfortunately I was singing the wrong character. It was supposed to be for the girl, not the guy. Okay. With a little start, he turned his head away from the easel and looked toward the door. Stella had only been in the house for 3 days, but he had already learned something from her habits, and knew when he heard the beautiful voice singing at the window in the early morning, he might expect to see the owner of the voice enter shortly. His expectation was not doomed to disappointment. The voice sounded on the stairs, in the hall, and in moments afterward, the door opened, and Stella stood, looking smilingly into the room. Yeah, for those of you who are wondering in the chat, if you have something for me to voice, you can find out in my bio. I do voiceovers, so if there's any voice commissions, just let me know. Okay, I'll continue now. If he had thought her beautiful and winsome on that first evening of her coming, when she was weary with anxiety and traveling, and dressed in dust-stained clothes, be sure he thought her more beautiful still than now that the light heart felt free to reveal itself. And the shabby dress had given place to the white and simple but graceful morning gown. Mrs. Penfold had worked hard during those 3 days, and with the aid of Delverfield had succeeded in filling a small wardrobe for her young lady, as she had learned to call her. The old artist, ignorant of the power of women in such direction, had watched the transformation with inward amazement and delight, and was never tired of hearing her about dresses, and hats, jackets, and capes, and was rather disappointed than otherwise when he found that the grand transformation had been effected at a very, very small cost. Bright and beautiful she stood, like a vision of youth and health in the doorway, her dark eyes laughingly contemplating the old man's gentle stare of wonder, the look which always came into his eyes when she appeared. "Did I disturb you by my piping, uncle?" she asked as she kissed him. "Oh no, my dear," he answered. "I like to hear you. I like to hear you." She leaned against his shoulder, looking at his work. "How beautiful it is," she murmured. "How quickly it grows. I heard you come down this morning, and I meant to get up, but I was tired. Lazy, wasn't I?" "Hi, hello there. Who's Papa?" "Me? No, yes, no." "Okay." No, he said eagerly. "I am sorry I could not disturb you. I came down as quietly as I could. I knew you would be tired after your dissipation. You must tell me all about it." "Yes, come to breakfast and I will tell you." Must I?" he said, glancing at his picture reluctantly. He had been in the habit of eating his breakfast by installments, painting while he ate a mouthful and drank his cup of coffee, but Stella insisted upon changing what she called a very wicked habit. "Yes, of course. See how nice it looks." And she drew him gently to the table and forced him the chair. The old man submitted with a sigh that was not altogether one of regret, and still humming, she sat opposite the urn and began to fill the cups. "And did you enjoy yourself?" he asked, gazing at her dreamily. "Oh, very much. They were so kind. Mrs. Hamilton is the dearest old lady. And the doctor, what makes him so smile so much, uncle?" "Hey, thank you so much for the like, Koyim." Oh, very well. Well, he was very kind, too, and so were Miss Hamilton's. It was very nice indeed, and they took so much notice of me. Asked me all sorts of questions. Sometimes I scarcely knew what to answer. I think that they thought, because I had been brought up in Italy, that I ought to have spoken with a strong accent and look utterly different to themselves. Oh, the clergyman, one second. Oh, the clergyman, Mr. Fielding, a very solemn gentleman indeed. He said that he didn't see very much of you, and hoped he had seen me in church. Mr. Etheridge rubbed his head and looked rather guilty. "I expect that was a backhanded knock for me, Stella," he said rather ruefully. "You see, I don't go to church often. I always mean to go, but I generally forget the time, or I wander into the fields, or up into the woods, and forget all about church till it's too late." "But that's very wicked, abominably so," said Stella, gravely, but with a twinkle in the dark eyes. "I must look after your morals as well as your meals, I see, uncle." Okay, that sounded a bit off. Okay. Yes, he assented. Do. "Well, there was a Mr. Allstone, a young gentleman from London. He was quite the lion of the evening. I think he was a nephew of Mr. Fielding's. The old man nodded. Yes. And did you like him? Stella thought a moment, holding the cream jug critically over the coffee mug. Not much, uncle. It was very wrong and bad taste, I'm afraid, for they all seemed to admire him immensely. So, did he himself? Mr. Etheridge looked at her, rather alarmed. I must say, Stella, you get too critical. I don't think we are quite used to it. She laughed. I don't fancy Mr. Addlestone at all of adverse criticism. He seemed quite satisfied with everybody, himself in particular. He certainly was beautifully dressed, and he had the dearest little hands and feet in the world, and his hair was parted to a hair, and as smooth as the black and tan terriers, so he had some grounds for satisfaction. What did he do to offend you, Stella? Asked the old man, rather shrewdly. She laughed again, and a little touch of color came into her face. But she answered quite frankly. He paid me compliments, uncle. That doesn't offend your sex generally, Stella. It offends me, said Stella. I detest them, especially when the man who pays them does it with a self-satisfied smile, which shows that he is thinking more of his own eloquence than of the person he is flattering. The old man looked at her. Will you oblige me and tell me your age again, Stella? She laughed. Am I too wise, uncle? Well, never mind. I promise to be good and stupid, if you like. But you're not eating any breakfast, and you must not keep looking at that odious easel all the time, as if you were longing to get back at it. Did you ever see a jealous woman? No, never. Well, if you don't want to, you must not confine all your attention to your work. I don't think there's much fear of when you are near, he said meekly. She laughed and jumped up to kiss him with delight. Now that was 1 second. Who is saying this? Okay. Now that was a splendid compliment, sir. You are improving rapidly. Mr. Addlestone himself could have done it more neatly. Scarcely had the words left her lips, the door that opened. Mr. Addlestone, said Mrs. Panfield. A young man, tall and dark, and faultlessly dressed, stood in the doorway, his hat in one hand, a bouquet of flowers on the other. He was undeniably good-looking, and as he stood with a smile upon his face, looked at his best, and that they were a little too small and a little too near together, might also have added they were rather shifty, and that there was something approaching the sinister in the curves of the thin lips. Okay, 1 second. Okay. But he was undeniably good-looking, and notwithstanding his well-cut clothes and spotless boots with their grey gaiters, his white hands with a choice of selection of rings, and there was an indication of power about him. No one could have suspected of him being a fool, nor lacking in the power of observation. For instance, he stood now, smiling, and for a welcome his dark eyes took in every detail about the room without appearing to leave Stella's face. Okay guys, give me a quick second, a quick break, 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. Hannah. One moment. Okay. Where was I? He was undeniably good looking and... Hi, Shy. Hello. Hi there. Okay. For instance, as he stood now, smiling and waiting for a welcome, his dark eyes took in every detail of the room without appearing to leave Stella's face. Mr. Atterridge looked up with the usual confused air with which he always received his rare visitors, but Stella held out her hand that with a smile calm and self-possessed. There was a great deal of the woman even about a girl of 19. "Good morning, Mr. Addleston," she said. "You have come just in time for a cup of coffee." "I ought to apologize for intruding at such an unseasonable hour," he said, as he bent over her hand, "but your good housekeeper would not hear of my going without paying my respects. I'm afraid I'm intruding." "Not at all." Oh wait, sorry. Wrong character. Not at all," murmured the artist. "Here's a chair," and he rose and cleared a chair of its litter by the simple process of sweeping it on the floor. Mr. Addleston sat down. "I hope you are not tired after your mild dissipation last night?" he asked of Stella. She laughed. "Not at all. I was telling Uncle how nice it was. It was my first party in England, you know." "Oh, you mustn't call it a party," he said, "but I'm very glad you enjoyed it." "What beautiful flowers," said Stella. Oof. I need more water. My throat's dying. Okay. Where was I? Okay. What beautiful flowers, said Stella, glancing at the bouquet. He handed them to her. "Will you be so kind as to accept them?" he said. "I heard you admire them in the conservatory last night. I brought them for you from the rectory greenhouse." "For me?" exclaimed Stella, open-eyed. "Oh, I didn't know. I'm so sorry you should have been troubled. It was very kind. You must have robbed the poor plants terribly." They would be quite consoled if they know for whom their blossoms were intended," he said with a low bow. Stella looked at him with a smile and glanced half archly at her uncle. "That was very nice," she said. Poor flowers. It is a pity they can't know. Can't you tell them? There's a language of flowers, you know." Oh my god. Voicing female characters. Mr. Addleston smiled. He was not accustomed to have his compliments met with such ready wit, and nonplussed for a moment, while his eyes dropped from her face with a little shifty look. Mr. Atterridge broke the rather embarrassing pause. "Please put them in the vase for her. Mr. Addleston, would you please? Come and have some breakfast. You can't have had any." He waited until Stella echoed the invitation, and then drew up the table. Stella rang for cup and saucer and plate, and then poured him some coffee, and he plunged into a small talk with the greeter's ease, his keen eyes watching every graceful turn of Stella's arm and glancing now and again at her beautiful face. Are you serious? Everyone's hitting on this girl? It's not really. Okay. It was a very good small talk and amusing. Mr. Addleston was one of those men who had seen everything. He talked of the London season that was just coming on, to Stella, who sat and listened, half amused, half puzzled, for London was an unknown land to her, and the string of names, noble and fashionable, which fell from his ready tongue, was entirely strange to her. And then he talked of the coming academy to Mr. Atteridge, and seemed to know all about the pictures that was going to be exhibited, and which ones would make a stir, and which would fail. And then he addressed himself to Stella again. You must pay London a visit, Miss Atteridge. There is no place like it, the whole world. Not even Paris or Rome. Stella smiled. It is not very likely that I'll see London for a long time. My uncle does not often go, although it is so near. Do you? No, he assented. Not often. Perhaps you are to be congratulated, said Mr. Addleston. With all its charms, I'm glad to get you away from it. You live there? Yes, he said, quietly, welcoming the faint look of interest in her eyes. Yes, I live in chambers, as it's called, in one of the old law inns. I am a lawyer. Stella nodded. I know, you wear a long black gown and a wig. He smiled. And address a jury, or do you say "me lord" instead of "my lord," as people in novels always make barristers say? I don't know. Perhaps I do, he answered with a smile, but I don't address a jury, or have opportunity of calling a judge "my lord" or "my lord" often. Most of my work is done at the chambers. I'm very glad to get down into the country for a holiday. Are you going to stay long? asked Mr. Atteridge with polite interest. Mr. Addleston paused a moment and glanced at Stella before answering. I don't know, he said. I meant going back today, but I think I might have changed my mind. Stella was only half listening, but the words caused her to start. They were the same as those which Mr. Lord Leicester had uttered 3 nights ago. Mr. Addlestone's keen eyes saw the start, and he made a mental note of it. Ah, it is a beautiful weather, said Mr. Atteridge. It would be a pity to live windward for London now. Lucille, thank you so much for the like. Yes, I shall be more than ever sorry to go now, said Mr. Addleston, and his glance rested for quite a moment on Stella's face. But it was quite lost, for Stella's eyes were fixed on the screen beyond the window, dreamily. Hi, shy, hi there. With almost a start, she turned to him. Let me give you some more coffee. No thanks, he said, and then, as Stella rose and rang the bell, he walked into the easel. That will be a beautiful picture, Mr. Atteridge, he said, reviewing it with a critical air. I don't know, said the artist, simply. You will exhibit it. I'll never exhibit anything, was the reply. No, I'm surprised, exclaimed the young man, but there was something in the quiet manner of the old man that stopped any further questions. No, said Mr. Atteridge. Why should I? I have, and he smiled, no ambition. Besides, I'm an old man. I have had my chances. Let the young ones take theirs. I leave them room. You are fond of art? Very, said Mr. Addleston. May I look around? The old man waved his hand and took up his brush. Jasper Addleston wandered around the room, taking up the canvases and examining them. Stella stood at the window, humming softly. Suddenly, she heard him utter an involuntary exclamation, and turning round, saw that he had the portrait of Lord Leicester in his hand. His face was turned towards her, and as she turned quickly, he was in time to catch a sinister frown of dislike, which rested for a moment on his face, but vanished as he raised his eyes and met hers. Lord Leicester, he said, with a smile and an uprising of the eyebrows. A remarkable instance of an artist's power. What do you mean? Asked Stella, quietly, but with lowered eyes. I mean, it is a fair example of ideality. Mr. Atteridge has painted a likeness of Lord Leicester, and added an ideal poetry of his own. You mean that it's not like him? She said. Mr. Atteridge painted on, deaf to both of them. No, he said, looking at the picture with a cold smile. It is like him, but it honors him. It endows him with poetry which he does not possess. You know him, said Stella. Who does not? He answered, and his thin lips curled into a smiling sneer. A faint color came into Stella's face, and she raised her eyes for a moment. What do you mean? I mean, Lord Leicester has made himself too famous. I was going to say infamous. A vivid crimson rushed to her face, and it left it pale against the next instant. Do not, she said, and then added quickly, I mean, do not forget, he is not here to defend himself. He looked at her with a sinister scrutiny. I beg your pardon. I did not know he was a friend of yours, he said. She raised her eyes and looked at him steadily. Lord Leicester is no friend of mine, she said, quietly. I am glad of it, he responded. Stella's eyes darkened and deepened in a way peculiar to her, and her color came. It was true that Lord Leicester was no friend of hers. She had but seen and spoken with him by chance, and for a few moments, who was this Mr. Addleston, that he should presume to be glad or sorry on her account? He was quick. He was quick to see he had made a slip, and quick to recover himself. Pray forgive me if I presumed too far upon our slight acquaintance, but I was only thinking at that moment that you had been such short a time in England as to be ignorant of people who were well known to us, whom they have lived, and you will not know Lord Leicester's real character. Stella inclined her head gravely. Something within her stirred. To take arms in the absent man's defense, the word infamous stuck and rankled in her mind. You said that Lord Leicester was infamous, she said with a grave smile. Surely that's too strong a word. He thought a moment, his eyes resting on her face keenly. Perhaps, but I'm not sure. I certainly used it as a play upon the word famous, but I do not think even then that I did him an injustice. A man whose name is known all over the country, whose name is familiar as a household word, must be notorious either for good or evil, for wisdom or folly. Lord Leicester is not famous for virtue or wisdom. I cannot say any more. Stella turned aside, a faint crimson dyeing in her face. A strange thrill of pity, and impatience at her heart. Why should he be so wicked, so mad, reckless, so notorious that even this self-satisfied young gentleman could safely moralize about him and warn her against it? Oh, the pity of it, as Shakespeare has it. That one with such a beautiful god-look face should be so bad. There was a few moments' silence. Jasper Addleston still stood with the picture in his hand, but glancing at Stella's face with coward watchfulness. With all his outward calmness, his heart was beating quickly. Stella was the sort of beauty to make a man's heart beat quickly, or not at all. Those who came to offer at a shrine would offer no half-measured oblations. As he watched her heart beat wildly, and his small bright eyes glittered, he had thought her beautiful at the party last night, where she had outshone all the girls of the village as a star that outshines a rushlight. But this morning, her loveliness revealed itself in all its fresh purity, and he, Jasper Addleston, the critical man of the world, the man whose opinion about women was looked upon by his companions in Lincoln's Inn and in bachelors' haunts at the West End, at worth having, felt his heart slipping from him. He put the picture down and approached her. Whoa, what's that? 1 sec. Okay. You have no idea how beautiful and fresh the meadows are. Will you stroll down to the river with me? He said, resolving to take her by surprise and capture her. Yeah, I know, right, Emma? He's kind of sus. Hey, Farhana. Yeah, there's something wrong in my net, but thank you for telling me. Okay. But he did not know Stella. She was only a schoolgirl, innocent and ignorant of the ways of men and the world. But perhaps perhaps because of that, because she had not learned the usual hackneyed words of evasion, the ordinary elementary tactics of flirtation, she was not meant to be taken by surprise. With a smile, she turned her eyes upon him and shook her head. Thank you. That is impossible. I have all my household duties to perform, and that, pointing to the sun with her white slim hand, reminds me of it is time I set about them. Yeah, I know, right, Emma? You got rejected. He took upon his hat instantly, turning to hide his frown, then knitted his brow and spoiled his face, and went up to the painter and said, "Good morning." Mr. Atteridge started and stared at him. He had quite forgotten his presence. Good morning? Good morning? Going? I beg your pardon. Wouldn't you stop and take some tea with us? Mr. Addleston would like some dinner first, Uncle, said Stella. Then she gave him her hand. Good morning, she said, and thank you very much for the flowers. He held out her hand as long as he dared, then passed out. Stella, perhaps unconsciously, gave a sigh of relief. Very nice young fellow, my dear, said Mr. Atteridge, without taking his eyes from the canvas. Very clever, too. I remember him quite a little boy, and always said he would make his own way. They say that he has done so. I'm not surprised. Jasper. Jasper? Said Stella. What a horrible name! Eh? Horrible? I don't know. But I do, said Stella, laughing. Well, what were you going to say? That Jasper Addleston is the sort of man to insist upon having anything he sets his heart upon. I'm glad to hear it, said Stella, as she opened the door. For his sake, and I hope also for his sake that he won't set his mind upon the sun and the moon. And with a laugh, she ran away. In the kitchen, Mrs. Panful was awaiting her with unconcealed impatience. Upon the white scrubbed table stood the preparations for making a pastry, an art which Stella had insisted on making herself useful, had coaxed Mrs. Panfield into teaching her. At first, that good woman had insisted that Stella should do nothing in the little household. You're right, Stella, slay, and ate. What a good little girl. What a nice life. Running away from school. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, where was I? Okay. She had announced with terrible gravity that such things weren't becoming to a young lady like Miss Stella, and that she had always done for Mr. Atteridge, and she always would. But before the second day had passed, Stella had won the battle. As Mrs. Panful said, there was no resisting the girl, who mingled willfulness with bewitching firmness and persuasion. And Mrs. Panful had given in. You'll cover yourself with flour, Miss Stella. I give your uncle the indigestion, miss. That you will, she remonstrated. But the flour will brush off, and uncle needn't eat pies and pudding for a little while. Don't worry, I'll eat them. I don't mind indigestion, Stella declared, and she made a delightfully piquant little apron, which completed Mrs. Panfold's conquest. With a song upon her lips, she burst into the kitchen and caught up rolling pin. "And I'm not awfully late," she exclaimed. "I was a little afraid you would have done it all before I came. But you wouldn't be so mean as to take advantage, would you?" Mrs. Panfold grunted. "It's all nonsense, Miss Stella. There's no occasion for it." Stella, with her hand in the flour, elevated the rolling pin in heroic style. "Mrs. Panfold!" she exclaimed, with the air of a princess. "The woman, be her station what it may, who cannot make a jam roly-poly, or an apple tart is unworthy of the name of an Englishwoman. Give me the jam. Stop, though. Do you think Rupert would be very nice for a change?" "My, I wish you'd go and play the organ, Miss Stella, and leave the Rupert alone." "Man cannot live on music," retorted Stella. "His soul craves for puddings. I wondered whether Uncle's soul craved for jam or rhubarb. I think I'll go and ask him." And then, dropping the rolling pin which Mrs. Panfold succeeded in catching before it fell on the floor, she wiped her hand off a 15th part of the floor and ran into the studio. "Uncle, I've come to lay before you the rival claims of rhubarb and strawberry jam. The one is sweet and luscious to the taste, but somewhat cloying. The other is fresh and young, but somewhat sour." "Good heavens! What are you talking about?" exclaimed the bewildered painter, staring at her. "Rhubarb or jam? Now, noble Roman, speak or die!" she exclaimed with an upraised arm, her eyes dancing, her lips apart with rippling laughter. Mr. Attridge stared at her with an awe and artist admiration in his eyes. "Oh, the pudding!" he said. And then he suddenly stopped and stared beyond her. Yeah, speak or die. Okay, well, that was the end of chapter 5. Okay. Well, that is going to be it for today.